Martin Luther was declared a heretic by the Edict of Worms in 1521, marking a critical turning point in the history of Christianity. This decree followed Luther's famous 95 Theses of 1517, which criticized the Roman Catholic Church's practices. The term 95 Theses comes from the fact that Martin Luther wrote 95 separate points or arguments in his document. A thesis is a proposition or theory that is put forward as a premise to be maintained or proven, so each of the 95 points can be considered a thesis. Luther's theses were primarily directed against the practice of selling indulgences, which were pardons that released people from performing the penalty for their sins. Luther objected to this practice on several grounds, including the belief that salvation could not be purchased, but was a gift from God, that the Pope did not have the authority to release souls from purgatory, and that Christians were better off seeking true repentance rather than buying indulgences. The 95 Theses was not the original title of the document. Its full title in Latin was Disputatio pro declaratione virtutis indulgentiarum, which translates to Disputation for clarifying the power of indulgences. However, because the document contained 95 clear and distinct statements or propositions, it became popularly known as the 95 Theses. On October 31, 1517, according to tradition, Luther nailed his theses to the door of the castle church in Wittenberg, Germany, as an invitation to debate these points. The date is now commemorated annually as Reformation Day. The 95 Theses were widely read and distributed, thanks in large part to the recent invention of the printing press. The boldness of Luther's criticisms generated a great deal of controversy and led to an examination of his teachings by the Church. In 1518, Luther was summoned to Augsburg to defend his views before Cardinal Thomas Cajetan, an emissary of Pope Leo X. However, the meeting was not successful as Luther refused to recant his writings. The following year, Luther debated with theologian Johann Eck in Leipzig. During the debate, Luther argued that the Bible was the only source of divine authority, not the Pope or Church councils. On January 3, 1521, Pope Leo X issued the papal bull Decet Romanum Pontificem, which formally excommunicated Martin Luther from the Church. However, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V wanted to hear Luther's views for himself, so he summoned Luther to the Imperial Diet in Worms, Germany. Luther arrived in Worms on April 16, 1521, and over the next few days he was questioned before the assembly. Johann Eck, the same man he debated in 1519, but unrelated to the theologian of the same name, acted as spokesman for the emperor and questioned Luther. Once again, Luther refused to recant, famously stating, "Here I stand, I can do no other." On May 25, 1521, the Edict of Worms was issued by Emperor Charles V, declaring Luther a notorious heretic. The edict made it a crime for anyone in Germany to give Luther food or shelter. It also permitted anyone to kill Luther without legal consequence. The edict was based on the report of a committee of bishops, which had declared that Luther's teachings were heretical. It was intended to suppress Luther's ideas and prevent them from spreading further. Despite the severity of the Edict of Worms, it was not universally enforced. Some parts of Germany, particularly those areas sympathetic to Luther's cause, largely ignored it. And while the edict was aimed at stopping Luther's teachings, it actually had the opposite effect. Luther's writings became even more popular after his excommunication and the edict, spreading throughout Europe and launching the Protestant Reformation. After the edict was issued, Luther went into hiding at Wartburg Castle, protected by Frederick the Wise, Elector of Saxony. While in hiding, Luther translated the New Testament into German, making it accessible to a wider audience and further promoting his ideas. The Edict of Worms was eventually suspended at the Diet of Speyer in 1526, which ruled that until a general council could be convened to settle the theological issues, every prince would have the right to act as he saw fit in religious matters within his own domain. A significant development that laid the groundwork for the eventual religious division of Germany.